Dak Prescott and his new contract, Andrew Luck not playing week 1, and the Houston Texans 2019 preview. We have a lot to talk about, guys. Welcome into Sports Around the Bar, the only sports talk show that actually gives a damn what you think, and we want to hear what you think about all these topics and more. I am Jake, your bartender. This is Drew, and man, Drew, as we pop these beers and get ready for it, what are you most excited to talk about today?
I'm excited to talk about everything, to be honest with you. The Andrew Luck thing, is he costing the Colts a realistic chance to, be big in the playoffs and make it to a Super Bowl? I mean, this guy's getting paid a lot of money to sit on the sideline hurt. I mean, I get that he played all last year healthy, but this is another issue. And let's not forget, a high ankle sprain, man, that is nothing to play around with. Yep. They're saying week 1 is the only one they're looking at with a high ankle sprain. It could literally be week 6 before this guy plays, because that is something that's just, you can't count on healing properly.
Absolutely. Devin, man, good to see you. Austin, you too. Sharif, good seeing you. And Ian as well. He says he can only stay a minute, but we're glad to see you anyway. We got a lot to talk about. I know Sharif's tuning in to hear about the Texans. And what this Titans fan thinks how they're going to bomb this shit.
I got to punt the brakes, because Ian always says he can only stay a minute, and then he's here the whole show.
Well, we'll be happy if you can stick around, man.
So, I expect you to be here the whole show. I'm just saying.
Howdy, Frank. Good to see you as well. Going into this, why don't we start with Dak? Can we start with Dak? I know you want to talk Andrew Luck, and I want to talk Andrew Luck because, again, division rival for me. You better believe the Titans getting brought up in this show.
No, we can do Dak
you
first.
Have to believe.
It's scary about Andrew Luck. That's all.
We'll do Dak first, and then I can talk about the Titans and how all this news relates to them for the rest of the show. How about that?
Your one shout out
for the rest of the show.
I mean, that was already a shout out.
It's going to be a tough rest of the show. We have to figure out what I'm going to talk about. But anyway, let's start with Dak Prescott and this new contract. Obviously, that shock number came out in the rumors that Dak had asked for $40 million, even after Jerry Jones and the Cowboys had put a $30 million a year contract out in front of him. Drew, even if that 40 number is a lie, like Dak's camp has kind of come out and said, that's not true, we weren't asking for 40, which I'll give you my thoughts on that in just a second. Even if he's not asking for 40, what is the magic number that Jerry Jones has to say, this is the line in the stand, this is the hard stop, I cannot give you this much money and expect to keep all the rest of this young talent on this up-and-coming Cowboys team?
It's Jerry Jones. Is there a line in the sand?
Well, he's got the salary cap, too. I know if he could, he'd pay them all, right? If they said, Jerry, we're baseball now, pay everybody what you want, he would be the first guy out there saying, I'm buying a Super Bowl.
Devin is saying Dak has skills, but he is nowhere worth the highest paid quarterback. And Sharif, Jake did see his first booby. That's why he is smiling.
Yeah, but it was mine. Disappointing. I gotta hit the gym. No, I'm also happy because I love talking about these teams struggling. There's the news of Jadeveon Clowney. I love talking about my division rivals.
I thought you're excited to talk about boobies. I was like, yeah, who
is
it?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that. Also, sports canceled today. We're talking boobs. Okay. What's the perfect ratio?
Do you guys like side boob?
Anyway.
That's my side boob.
We are going to get back to the sports, I promise.
Hold on, one more.
One more, go ahead.
I'm kidding, I'm ready.
All right. Anyway, going back to Dak Prescott here, is there a line in the sand, Drew? Is there a number that you're like, he's worth 32.3, but he's not worth 32.4?
I think 30. And that's, to me, is too high. I think 30 is the line in the sand. Let's be honest, it is the market for young and upcoming quarterbacks or an already seasoned vet that's already won a Super Bowl. That 30 number is what everyone's looking at. So I think this is the line in the sand. And Ty is in on talking about boobies for the rest of the show. I'm just throwing that out there.
Also, Austin says he's average at best, going back to Dak, not the boobs. He says average at best, but not a top 10 paid quarterback. I'm with you, Austin, but if you have the choice of let him walk or pay him, I think it's an interesting question. I think the Cowboys are in a tough spot here, but let me counterpoint this. Next year, there's a chance Andy Dalton gets cut by the Bengals because they're going to have a top pick. Or you're going to be able to trade a low-round pick and go get Andy Dalton on a much more affordable $18-19 million contract than you are if you go and acquire, or than you are if you go and pay Dak Prescott. You're also going to likely have Marcus Mariota or Ryan Tannehill, whichever one the Titans don't prefer. One of those guys is probably going to hit the bricks, regardless of...
Right.
Anything else, one of those guys is going to be a free agent. You're probably going to have Jameis Winston. You may have Joe Flacco available if Drew Lock pans out. You may have Case Keenum available if Dwayne Haskins pans out for the Washington Redskins. There are going to be options in free agency where you're going to be able to put a mid-tier quarterback out there. Maybe 15 to 20 or 20 to 25 instead of wherever Dak is at. But you're talking about paying that guy 10 to 12 to 14 million dollars, and you're talking about Dak making 30 plus. That's CJ Mosley you could add to your team. That could be Le'Veon Bell. I get it, they already have Zeke, but you can go get a top level free agent for that kind of money, plus that other quarterback. That is the difference really that far away from what Dak Prescott's going to give you? That's why I'm saying get the boots out. It's nothing against Dak. I think he's a good quarterback. I think, again, you look at him, a lot of Cowboys fans have made this point to me. If you look at him and Carson Wentz on paper, their stats are pretty close to identical. And Dak has not had the injuries that Carson Wentz has had. Then again, if you look at some of the next tier stuff, like average depth of target, you're seeing Dak not throw the ball quite as far. You're seeing him go through safer motions and safer passes than a lot of other people are. But there's a counter to that, too. He hasn't had the receivers. And you saw what he did with Amari Cooper.
And there's good coaching involved there, because they realize that he can't throw the ball down, lack of talent on his side or lack of talent of receiving. They are putting the playbook to what Dak can do well with what he has around him. Frank's out there saying that 28 is the number that
makes sense.
That makes sense both. To make sense, or it's the line in the sand. He wouldn't go above that. And Sharif is saying Dak has a leadership, and Dak has stood by the owner, and Dak has a winning record since he took over as a starter. So he's thinking anywhere from 19 to 23.
Okay, but all those things you were saying were great, and then they floated him a $30 million offer, and he said not even close. And even Jerry Jones came out today and alluded that they're not close on the number. So for all the Cowboys fans out there telling me that 40 is fake, right? That $40 million number and rumor that came out that that's what Dak had asked for first is fake. If Jerry Jones, and this has been pretty much confirmed, they offered him $30 million a year, or at least by sources, so at least Jerry Jones' camp is saying they offered him $30 million a year. And Jerry Jones is saying we're still not close. How far away from 40 is he?
That's okay. It's not false. I guarantee it was 40. What they did is say, here's 30, and Dak's like, no, I want 40, and he wants to meet somewhere in the middle.
And that's how you negotiate, right? You always set that bar way high, and you settle somewhere in the middle. Hopefully, I bet you he's probably thinking I want 35 or 36, because now Russell Wilson's getting 35, and he's the highest paid quarterback in the league. I know Jerry Jones is looking at it and saying Carson Wentz just got 32, albeit before Russell Wilson got paid, but your competitor or closest competitor this year just got 32. Is there any way I can swing a deal for slightly less than that? Because you don't want to pay top dollar for anybody in the NFL. You don't want to be the team that pays, even though Jerry Jones has been that guy, because that takes away from the rest of the team. And I think now Jerry Jones sees the rest of this Cowboys team is looking pretty good. They have a lot of young talent. Sure, they need some secondary help. Sure, they maybe need another offensive lineman or two, or at least the gang to all stay healthy. But right now, and they probably could use another receiver. I don't think Randall Cobb or tight end is that great. They could use another pass catcher, I should say. But Dallas is close. Dallas is really close. And yes, it could throw all of that out the window by not paying this quarterback, but it could also throw all that out the window by paying him too. So again, tough spot for the Cowboys.
No, it is. I don't know if you said hi to Scott. Scott, glad you could join us. Steven's in here too. He goes off and says, Dak is far better than Dalton and not worth the money. However, this is what the NFL now is nowadays. It's not about being the best player to get those huge contracts. If you are an average quarterback and up for a new contract, you will get a big payday, which was what I was getting at. Right. Is nowadays that 30 mark is what everyone's shooting for. He goes off and says, and possibly be the new highest paid player in the league at that time. The contract is signed. The NFL is a joke with contracts now.
The other thing I will say, though, is does it need to be that way? Or are we going to see some of these teams fade it? Because, yes, it's a copycat league, and then somebody goes the opposite direction and has success, and then we see everybody copy them. Are the Cowboys the first team that are willing to win the game of chicken and say, we'll just let you go? We'll let you go, and we'll try to sign another guy that's about at your level, or draft somebody and start over again and see if we can have success with a great roster. Because we've seen guys, and I talk about this, win with subprime quarterbacks. Peyton Manning when he's injured. Joe Flacco for the Ravens. We've seen teams win at quarterback, win the Super Bowl, or get close with a guy like Cam Newton. That this isn't a top 5 guy. This isn't a top 10 guy. On the reverse, you look at last year, or I think it was 2 years ago, 6 of these top paid quarterbacks didn't make the playoffs. So you're throwing all this money out there, and you're going to sabotage the team. You're going to turn into Indianapolis. You're going to turn into Green Bay that is just shoveling cash at the quarterbacks and have nothing to show for it because the rest of the team falls apart. And Dak isn't those guys, right? I mean, if it's not working with Andrew Luck and Aaron Rodgers, is it going to work with Dak Prescott? No. But you weren't listening.
No, I was. I'm just trying to get to some of these comments, man. Scott says he thinks Dak is a tad bit underrated.
He could be. I mean, it's fun to poop on Dak, isn't it? Right? Everybody kind of craps all over him when they're like, he's not that good of a quarterback. He's 20th. Then again, you look on paper. He's not that far off from Carson Wentz, right?
No.
At least in the surface level stats, and it all goes into how much you believe in all the analytics, right? Because not everybody believes in all those super deep analytics. Some people say he's got to pass the eye test. Some people say it's all about the yardage. Nothing else matters, right? It's all about the completion percentage.
I'm sorry, Dak is not Carson Wentz. I get Carson Wentz has been through injury issues, but that's comparing oranges to apples. There's a as Dak is a good quarterback, and you can build an offense around Dak and make Dak successful, which Dallas has done. That works. But Carson Wentz is a prototype quarterback for the NFL. He is a guy that literally can go almost into any system and succeed. And that's just the way his talent is. Now, health issues, yeah. You want Dak over Wentz because
So you're
Wentz
a little bit more of an eye test guy, right? Because on paper they're the same, but you're kind of with me.
Talk about per game.
Well, here's what I'm saying.
You're saying the stats are the same, but look at the games.
That is true. And he's been healthier. But that's also your argument too, isn't it?
Right.
Like, he's out there and he's healthy.
And it's huge. I think $30 million for Dak, even though I think it's high, is realistic for a young quarterback that has proven himself to be an important part of your team.
And I just don't see it. I don't. I think if you're going to keep this team together, I understand what you're coming from.
I agree with you too, though.
That might be what they're asking, but I got to say I don't see it. I think you have to let this walk because you're going to have options. If anything, we're seeing teams and we're seeing almost a glut of quarterbacks than we've seen in the past 10 or 15 years. Where now you're going to have mid-range options hit the market. Remember before Kirk Cousins got hit free agency and everyone's like there are no free agent quarterbacks. You guys like Blaine Gabbert, and that's like the top guy, or Ryan Fitzpatrick, and that's the top guy. Another guy who might be out there. I don't think those days are here anymore. I mean, I just named you 4, 5, 6 names of guys out there that could give you close to what Dak Prescott can give you and won't cost you, half or a third of what he's going to cost you. Are they older? Sure, but you don't necessarily need to have a 10-year solution. You could have a guy who's going to be there for the next 3, 4, 5 years until you go and hit on another quarterback.
When you ask me, would I offer Dak if he was a Chief and would I offer Dak $30 million a year? And what he's done and what that team has built around him, they have a great defense in Dallas. There's no doubt about it. They have one of the best running backs in the league. They have a receiver that had a second life, a second wind in their organization. And you had success around it, yeah, you pay the guy. Because you talk about bringing in Andy Dalton. You talk about bringing in Ryan Tannehill, or Sharif said Jameis Winston, or Ian said you can get Jameis Winston for a bag of Doritos. The one thing is now you're starting it all over. Chemistry is being reset. This isn't Peyton Manning walking into the Denver Broncos organization where they're like, hey, you run the offense. These are guys that you have to build chemistry with. You have to build a playbook with and start down the road of being successful. That's why I sit there and everyone's like, as Bronco fans, sit there and say, oh, man, we got Joe Flacco, a winning quarterback or a winning Super Bowl quarterback. It's not the same. There's a huge difference. So if you're sitting there going, I have a guy that's been under center for 2-3 years. We found success. We've been in the playoffs. We have a team that's built around him and an offense that built around him. You pay the man to stay there. As much as I think he's worth it, no, he's probably not, because statistically, he doesn't need to be around those numbers. But that is the new number that's set. We're seeing a huge change in players' contracts, definitely towards the quarterback side, where they're looking at this cap increasing every year. This is where you pay a starting quarterback, especially when it's bringing you into the playoffs.
Yeah, and Sharif said Wilson has a ring, Carson Wentz has a ring, even though it took Nick Foles to clutch it and get the job done for him. So they are worth the money. And Dak, because he does not have a Super Bowl ring, is not. Well, Joe Flacco's got a ring. That doesn't make him a $30 million man. I think you got to also look at the talent and what they actually bring to you.
You got to remember, he was one of the highest paid quarterbacks at one time.
And he was, yes, exactly. And how did it turn out? And I think this might be the next kind of scenario for that, except the reverse is the Ravens did a great job of keeping their defense at least super competitive, even if they didn't have big-time names all the time. They managed to churn guys over and then stay competitive by not paying guys. And we're seeing that happen again with the Ravens. So, yes, Joe Flacco did get paid, but you can't tell me the Ravens didn't pay the price for that, because what have they done since then? I mean, they've been a fringe playoff team pretty much year in and year out and have not made the big show, or at least made an impact in the playoffs.
James, Alex, glad you guys could join us. I'm right there with you. Sharif said Did you say that you would take Blaine Gabbert over Dak Prescott?
What? No. I was saying in years past, Blaine Gabbert was like the best free agent name out there. Now I'm saying you see better free agent quarterbacks hitting the market because we're starting to get a lot of young guys that go out there, and we're going into the era where you're getting 4 and 5 quarterbacks in the first round, and then maybe a couple depth guys too.
This is what we were talking about in our last episode where the popularity of the NFL, there is so much talent coming out of college and so much older talent getting ready to change teams, retire, whatever it is. This is a year where you're 100% right. You don't have to spend high money on some of these free agents. But when it comes to quarterback, the most important position on the field, and you already built a team that has built chemistry around this guy, you got to pay him. You got to pay him.
I think you can roll the dice. And again, I think this is the first step in changing that idea because that is the prevailing thought in the NFL, right? And there's a chance the Cowboys do it, they crash and burn, and everyone's like, okay, we got to pay him. From now on, it's are you brave enough to be the first team to step away and say, I'm not going to pay my young quarterback that wants too much money over his value. I'm going to stay on the number that I believe, or I'm going to replace him because, again, you're in this opportunity this year. You're going to have other guys who are going to be able to come in free agency in 2020, whereas a couple of years ago, that wasn't the case.
Jonathan is saying Dak is not a leader like any of those quarterbacks you mentioned. Before you answer, I have to completely disagree with you, Jonathan. And the only reason I say that is if you go back and you look at some of those plays that he was making during the playoffs, that guy might not be a physical, vocal a leader, but he's a physical leader on the field. That guy is taking his body and putting it out there for just pretty much sacrifice to show his team, like, you can rally around me, man. I'm sorry. I think if you're saying he's not a vocal leader, sometimes they don't have to be.
Neither's Tom Brady. You don't see Tom Brady going out there saying, hey, we're going to go beat the Packers. No, he's Mr. It's going to be, well, okay.
He does.
On the sidelines, he gets fired up and everything.
Right.
In the games, we see him be fired up. We see him be that vocal leader. But he's not the guy that's going in the media being like, man, we're going to trash these guys. We're going to do this. It's all in what you're looking for. He, in the media, is incredibly respectful to people, right? He's like, hey, these guys are great competitors. We always love them. We always love playing against them or whatever. They're fantastic. They're great at football and everything else. And then when it's time to show up, he shows up. I think Dak, if I can make one more leadership point here, is absolutely a leader. And we don't want to go too political here, but when we were having all the kneeling in the NFL, Dak was one of the guys who did not kneel because his owner was very against it. Jerry Jones was incredibly against it. He went to bat, and he took a lot of flack for that. The easy thing to me would have been to say, I'm doing it too, because that's the popular thing right now, because I can get on Twitter and Facebook and all these social media platforms to come out and praise me and kiss my butt by doing it, whether you believe in it or not. That was the easy thing to do. The hard thing to do as a black man playing quarterback was to sit there and stand for the national anthem. He kept doing that regardless of everything everyone was talking about. So I can't say he doesn't have backbone. He does, absolutely. And I don't care what side of that argument you fall on. That took courage to come out and say, I'm going to stand for it. It did. Yeah. Just as much as you could say it took courage for Kaepernick to come out and kneel for it, took courage for Dak, where the easy thing to do would have been say, I'm going to join the movement and everything like that. I'm going to be a follower. Instead, he said, I'm not going to do it.
James asked me, how do I think the Texans will do this year?
We are going to get that in a minute.
I think he's trying to stay away from the Titans fan. Man, to be honest with you, I think there's still a glaring hole in that offensive line. But in my opinion, it's a win-now scenario. We will get to the record. Trust me, man, I will get to tons of it about it. But in my opinion, this is a win-now scenario for the Houston Texans.
Also, Frank, going to Dak, and we'll move on here in just a second, guys, because it's not just the Dak and Cowboys show. We will talk about something else.
What's up, Neil?
Even though they've been in the comments here for a while. But I do want to say here, Frank says wait until next year to make a deal with Dak Prescott. I think that's the nightmare scenario, because the only option you have then, the only negotiating power you have, is we have the franchise tag. And the franchise tag is the average, for the first year that you use it, the average of the top 5 paid players at the position. You're going to pay them that $32, $33, $34 million number, and that might even go higher when you get guys like Jared Goff signing new contracts. So I think at the very least the Cowboys need to either make something happen, or you just resign yourself that you're going to franchise him once or maybe even twice and be done. Because, again, you're running out of options here. This is where you want to re-sign the quarterback. You don't want to get to the point where he can walk out the door.
Yeah. Neil saying Mitch Trubisky over Watson. He's also saying Watson is overrated. I think both of those quarterbacks, if you're a Houston Texan fan, or if you're a Chicago Bears fan, I think you should be excited for both of these quarterbacks to be in your franchise, regardless if it's one or the other. I think they both have bright futures in the NFL.
I'm sold on Watson. I think he's good as long as he stays healthy and on the field, and we're not hitting him 65 times like I'm going to talk about with the Houston Texans. I think you have a lot to be excited about with Watson, and this is coming from a Titans fan, so believe me, it took everything I had to say that. As for Mitch Trubisky, I think it's a little bit of the Dak Prescott syndrome where we've seen a little bit of safer throws from him and everything. We haven't seen him really have the crucible of we need you to make something happen like Carson Wentz kind of was in Philadelphia where they had no running game. So I'm not quite as there with Mitch Trubisky as I am with Deshaun Watson, but I think as long as Mitch follows the trajectory that we think he can, you've got something there in Chicago too. And that'll be the guy that when it comes time, you'll make him close to, if not the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And that, who knows, by the time that comes up, that could be 40, 42, 45, $50 million. High tide raises all boats, right? It always goes up.
Yeah, I'm right there. Sharif says, and guys, all these comments are absolutely phenomenal. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. We love the likes, the shares.
You want to go rapid fire? Go ahead.
I just want to get to one that Sharif says, Mitch isn't a killer yet. And I know he put killer as all capital, but I think the word that should have been capitalized is yet. Let's not forget this guy played 1 year in college. He was a backup all the way through until his final year. He took North Carolina and turned it into almost a college football team. I mean, this is a guy that now took over.
What do you mean the ACC's weak?
This is also a guy that took over the Chicago Bears quarterback scenario, which was literally a dumpster fire. I mean, it was atrocious.
Yeah.
And for him to sit there and rally this team around him, regardless of if he's taking the team on his back and making it his team yet, let's give this guy a chance. I mean, in the NFL, normally at this point in time, if he was not succeeding in the eyes of the coach and the organization, they would have already moved on.
Yeah, I agree. James, we'll go rapid fire here through these comments, and then we'll talk about Andrew Luck real quick. James says he thinks Dak will get his money. James, I think you're 100% right. I think the Cowboys should kind of give this pause and say, what are we buying here with this $35 million? But I think you're right. I think Jerry Jones, at the end of the day, will find a way to pay him, and they'll come to a number they agree on. I think it's going to be 35. I think maybe 35 and a half or 36. It'll be something that makes him the highest paid player in the NFL. Also, Sharif says Watson is hands down the better QB than Mitch Trubisky. It's tough to say because, again, we saw Watson have a great 4 games, get hurt, come back, have a great season, but also get hit a lot, everything else. I think Watson's been very, very good. I'd say probably he's better, but it's early, man. 2 years is not enough to say one guy is 100% better than the other, okay?
I do got one thing. Alex says, that's true. Remember Rex Grossman? Hey, he brought him to a Super Bowl. Just throwing that out there.
No. They brought Rex to the Super Bowl, okay?
No.
They lost that Super Bowl. Rex was the best guy when you had a lead, okay? But behind, Rex Grossman was maybe the worst quarterback in football history. He's like Nathan Peterman when you guys are behind. Just pick city. That's all it was. So don't give me that he got to no. They got him to a Super Bowl, not
Rex Grossman, the bandwagon fan right here.
The Bears got
Super Bowl appearance quarterback.
He's got more Super Bowl appearances than I do.
Exactly.
All right, couple more, and then we got to move on. Jonathan says Dak needs Zeke to succeed. I totally agree with you, and I think that's why this is as big of an issue as it is. Because if they had all the money at their disposal, I think Jerry Jones would have paid everybody. Instead, he's working with a cap limit, so he's trying to find some numbers that work where he doesn't have to sacrifice all those great defenders, and he doesn't have to sacrifice his offensive line, and he's going to keep Amari, Dak, and Zeke all in Dallas. So he's got his work cut out for him.
Yeah, no doubt.
He does. Absolutely. I just saw Neil saying hi, so I'm like 3,000 miles behind. I said rapid fire, but
we know.
I'm always behind.
We're just waiting on you.
It's because I talk too much. There's the Mitch isn't a killer yet. I see that. Okay. James says Watson is the best thing to happen to the Texans, and yes, I thought this was Jameis Winston times 2.
Yeah.
Because he had the turnover problems at Clemson. He had some. I don't want to say concerns, but there was like accuracy questions for Deshaun Watson, and when they took him, I was like, okay. Hopefully this turns into another Jameis Winston kind of scenario where great in college, less great in the pros. But if a guy has made the transition, it's been Deshaun Watson, right? And I give Dabo Swinney a ton of credit because he was the guy saying, this guy, he's going to be LeBron James.
Yeah.
That was his thing. He said he's going to be LeBron James of the NFL when he was drafted. And I said, Dude, come on.
Could you imagine
I said,
him
dude, come on. But he's been good. He's not that good, but he's good.
Could you imagine him behind, like, Dallas's offensive line or Indianapolis' offensive line last year? Could you imagine?
Don't steal the thunder from the Houston Texans part of the show. We're going to be talking about what they need to do to get this guy out there. You're right. He's done a lot with a little. And it's hard to say DeAndre Hopkins is a little, but he has done a lot with flawed offense.
It is when there's pressure in your face consistently over and over.
Okay. I'm sorry. 79 comments. Thank you guys so much for all of them. I'm sure they were all great, but we are going to talk about Andrew Luck. We got to do it.
We got to do it.
We got to do it.
It's overwhelming, and that's what's
a good thing.
That's
exactly.
Great. And as obviously you guys can keep on talking about it as a community and keep it relevant in yours, but we got to move on as a show. And this is something that I really want to talk about because the Colts, again, are handicapped by Andrew Luck and his health issues. And as much as I think they're trying to underplay a high ankle sprain, this is something that can sideline him for half the season. I mean, it's
not good.
This is a serious injury that he can get. He will heal from, but it does sometimes take a lot of time because there's no stretch. There's no rehab. It's a matter of how long your body takes to heal from this.
And more than that, how long until you're comfortable on it. Because once you pull a high ankle sprain, you're going to be ginger on it. Every guy is going to be thinking about, man, I know what it felt like when it happened to me. I don't want that to happen again, so they're going to be a little ginger. Maybe they get a little gun shy. Injuries like this are the kinds that set you back. The thing that I hate, though, or the thing that I definitely don't agree with is the point that some people are saying, is Andrew Luck holding the Colts back? And to that, I have to say, hell no. Okay, the Colts are the Colts because Andrew Luck is there. Because you've got a top 5 quarterback, maybe even top 3 quarterback in Andrew Luck. I get it, the injuries are frustrating, but football is a dangerous sport, and guess what? Just like Deshaun Watson, you didn't do a good job of protecting him. So these things are now creeping up. The Houston Texans, like we're going to talk about here, need to learn from their mistakes and need to learn from Indianapolis' mistakes and not let their top-tier quarterback or their stud quarterback or their quarterback of the future take this kind of beating, or these kind of setbacks will be in their future too.
The reason why I want to sit there and say that I disagree with you is because they just put one of the best offensive lines Andrew Luck has seen his whole career, and he couldn't stay healthy. He
did stay healthy for last year. Okay, he got hurt off the field, right?
That's exactly what I'm getting.
He got hurt off the field, but he was comeback player of the year. He played all 16 games last year. I get it,
and he played a great. He played a great season. And arguably could have been the MVP of last year.
He was in the conversation.
But my
probably
point
not going to win it, but he was in the conversation.
It doesn't matter if it's the best offensive line. It doesn't matter if it's the worst offensive line. Andrew Luck is having a problem staying healthy. He is taking a majority of their cap, which I know they have tons of money, and that someone's going to say, they got money, they could spend it. The point is you don't pay a player to sit on the sideline. I hype.
Unless you're the Eagles.
I harp on that. That's huge about
Sorry,
what I
Carson
think.
Wentz fans. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
This is an issue, and it wasn't on the field. It was off the field. What's the next thing that's going to hurt this guy?
No, it's an issue. I'm not saying it's not an issue.
So why? Hold on. Before you go on that, because you said it is an issue. How is it not handicapping this team?
It's what you've already. It's the hand you've dealt yourself because you didn't protect him early on in his career.
That's a handicap.
You want to keep him healthy. No, it's not. You let just like David Carr, just like Deshaun Watson's taking too many hits. If you let your quarterback get beat up, you are setting yourself up for failure in the future.
I think he was one of the least or the least sacked quarterback last year.
Okay, last year. All right, when he's 29, right. So it took them 7 years to figure it out.
Like the couple years prior to that.
Years? No, he's been mauled.
He held the record.
No, since he's been in the league, he's been mauled. This is just like Big Ben. We've seen Big Ben take injury or have injury concerns because he was hit so much younger in his career. It's not hard, right? Let me take it back. It's not hard to talk about. It's very hard to do. Protect your quarterback in the NFL. Keep as many licks off him as you can. So the thing I don't buy in this, everyone's saying, Andrew Luck is holding back the Colts. The Colts are a thing because Andrew Luck is good. Yes, you have a decent offensive line. Even though I like Marlon Mack as a player, you're not winning games because Marlon Mack's that good. T.Y. Hilton, great receiver. You're not winning games because you have T.Y. Hilton and you're going to go put a bum back there to throw the ball. He's not DeAndre Hopkins in that sense.
Right.
The defense, again, mid-range last year, even though we were talking them up, and a lot of those came off of the backs of very bad offenses and catching teams at the right time where you're going to go put up a 6 or a 0 on defense where you beat up on those bad teams and let teams like the Jets drop 42 against you. The Colts are the Colts because Andrew Luck is a top 5 quarterback. And just like they were with Peyton Manning, this has never been I shouldn't say never. It has been a very few and far between years-wise, very well put together roster. This is a roster that has lived and died by their quarterback, and right now you're living and dying by Andrew Luck. There's no alternative. You've got a top 5 guy. I get what you're saying. It sucks. It sucks, Colts fans. It sucks for everyone rooting for the Colts. It's great for everyone in the AFC South, because if Andrew Luck misses time, that means you have a chance to beat him. But this team is what it is because Andrew Luck is as good as he is. There's no moving on. There's no anything. What you have to do as a GM is say, man, that sucks. Hopefully next year's better. That's all you can say. Jonathan, and there's no guarantee he's going to miss time.
I got to do Jonathan's comment. He says, but Dak is a leader by putting his neck out? ? Yes. Yes, he is.
That is a leader move.
Look at Eli Manning. He's falling on the ground before he even gets hit. Look at other quarterbacks that have had injury issues that will fall on the ground or throw the ball away instead of sitting there making the move to win a game. I'm not saying that the quarterbacks can't do that and still be a leader, but Dak is not a verbal leader, Jonathan. He is a physical leader by taking the ball and making physical moves with his body, putting his body on the line. Yes, that makes him a leader. 100%. Sometimes leaders lead by actions instead of words. Now, do I agree with you that there needs to be someone that has his back that is a verbal leader? Yeah, maybe that's why they bring Jason Witten back. Maybe he's a verbal leader. He's a seasoned, proven veteran that showed everyone how to be a true NFL veteran in this league. Maybe that's your verbal guy. But as far as on the field, every play, every moment, Dak is that guy. You could sit there and say Zeke, but Zeke seems to always be thinking about himself. Dak, on the other hand, maybe minus his contract issue, so far it seemed like he's put this team since
and that's what leaders do. They stick their neck out, whether it's on the field or not. I mean, they step up to bat when it's time. When the easy thing would be to sit there and kowtow. So yes, I absolutely do believe that part of his leadership has been off the field as well, and that's what you want to see. If I'm Jerry Jones, that 100%. In my mind, helped him out for the terms of whether he needs to be re-signed or not. A couple more of these. James also says, put Hopkins and T.Y. together. You couldn't go wrong. I'm not saying T.Y. Hilton is a bad receiver, but look at T.Y. Hilton when they had Curtis Painter. He suffered just like everybody else. T.Y. Hilton's a great player. I think he's one of those receivers that doesn't get enough respect in the NFL, and it's coming from a Titans fan. The guy's a monster, okay? But you can't tell me that just T.Y. Hilton out there with some quarterback who's not very good, and I know everyone's saying they got Jacoby Brissett. We'll talk about that in just a sec. You can't tell me that they are not going to succeed more with Andrew Luck behind quarterback, and Andrew Luck doesn't help make this offense. T.Y. Hilton is not good enough to win you games by himself, and there's not many receivers that are. So, to my point, I absolutely believe T.Y. Hilton, great player, but not quite that transcendent talent that can win games for a team by himself. We've seen T.Y. disappear.
Just because me and Jonathan are still talking about this, he says, but it's not smart. I completely agree with you, man. Health will be a concern at some point in time. Dak won't always stay young. He needs to protect his body. I'm agreeing with you. Then he goes, is Luck a leader? Yes, he is. Not only is he verbally a leader, he's also another one of those leaders that go out on the field when healthy and put his body on the line, and he has suffered from it.
And you don't always have to be the hype man to be the leader, right? I think a lot of times we look for the guy that's in the middle of the huddle, pumping everyone up. You know who else did that? Jameis Winston. And I'm not calling Jameis Winston's leadership into question, but just because you have the hype man, the guy that's out there, for the cameras, firing people up, eating W's and everything else, you don't always have to be that guy to be a leader. You can be the strong kind of, I don't want to say strong silent type, but you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room to still be the leader on the team. I think Andrew Luck is absolutely a fantastic leader. I think Dak is a good leader, and I think that might be one of his best qualities. That might be the biggest reason for me to re-sign this guy, because I don't think he's the best passer in the league. I don't think he's the best runner in the league, but I do believe he's got that leadership qualities that I would like to keep around on my team.
Yeah. Steven's got a two-part comment here. He says, any quarterback that wants $40 million to be barely above average quarterback isn't team first. As you guys stated earlier, most teams with these massive quarterback contracts are struggling. That's not thinking team first.
True.
Brady and his $11 million per year season is thinking about team first. Before you comment, Jake, I just want to put this out here, man.
Well, I do want to hit Jeremy's too.
Yes,
go ahead and say yours, and then I think Jeremy made a good counterpoint. Go ahead.
You're fine. The reason why Brady can say, "Hey, I'm willing to take $11 million," first of all, his wife makes 3 times, 4 times, 5 times the amount of Tom Brady makes in a year. These other quarterbacks don't have that. Their wives don't work. So they're really going, hey, my time to make money is now.
Not to mention Dak Prescott as a 4th-round pick last year was earning like $600,000.
Right. And
so he might be saying, I could be team first on contract 3, especially in today's NFL where you're probably going to reach it as a quarterback.
Yeah, and my point is not every player is sitting in the same situation that Tom Brady is. Tom Brady has tons of endorsements. Dak, probably mostly around Houston.
No, he's been in a Campbell's Chunky commercial, so he's got that big Campbell's money.
It's not the same as Tom Brady. It's not.
No, but
and that's why
right?
Tom Brady could sit there and take less money.
But winning fixes that. And you know what the easiest way to win is? There is a counterpoint. It's not guaranteed. I've talked about this off the show before. I haven't really done it on camera.
Oh, I didn't even read Jeremy's comment.
Let me hit Jeremy's because he did make a good point. I want to go back to it. He says that's because his wife makes millions too. You're absolutely right. That helps things out. But to my point with the endorsements, that comes with winning. But it's not guaranteed. It's one of those things that even if you do everything right, you take that $10 million contract and you help the team out, if the team doesn't win, you could miss out on that money. Are guys willing to risk it, or would they rather take the safe way out and hold the Cowboys hostage and say, you're going to pay me $32, $35, $38 million, and no matter what the team does, I'm getting paid? That's the easy thing to do, especially when you're earning $600,000. He might feel like he's owed more money from what he's given the Cowboys, and I think that's where a lot of these kind of issues have come in.
Let's not forget, this isn't the first quarterback to ever ask for more money than any other quarterback out there.
Mm-hmm. It's an ego thing, too.
It is. But I'm telling you right now, him and his camp do not believe they're going to get 40. But you ask for 40 because they're going to counter-offer. You got to put a ceiling on an offer. You got to.
Yes, you do.
What was that face for?
Sorry, I read James' comment where he says Winston is the best thing to happen to Tampa, and I was like, what? I don't know that I agree there. You might have lost me, and I'm a Tampa fan. I'm not sure if you're being sarcastic or not, James, but I think Winston has, I don't want to say held them back, but because they've kind of done that to themselves, but he hadn't been great either. A lot of yardage, a lot of turnovers.
Jonathan, we do agree, and sorry about your service, man. Hopefully you're in a better spot, but we have said ever since this conversation started that Dak is not a verbal leader. I don't know if you missed that part or not, but yeah, 100%. I have not seen him he does talk on the sideline. He does talk in the huddle, but he's not that rah-rah kind of guy. He is mostly do it on the field with his body.
Right, and Jonathan also said that he thinks that even with the injury, guys like Wentz and Luck are both better leaders and quarterbacks than Dak is. We're with you. We agree, and that's kind of why we're saying Dak's not worth the $32 million that Wentz got or whatever Andrew Luck is sitting at, because he was another one of those guys that was highly paid. It's been a few years. He's probably dropped back in the numbers, but I think he's close to the top. He might be number 4 or number 5. He might be just like an edge ahead of Kirk Cousins, but we're with you, man. I think on paper, the stats can get a little deceptive, but when you watch the games and you watch what Wentz and Luck can do and some of the throws they can make and what Dak has been asked to do to this point, we got to say Dak is not there.
Yeah.
Right? That's why we ranked him I think we had him like 18 in our quarterback.
20,
yeah, it was somewhere above 20, but below 15. He's not better than half the quarterbacks in the NFL.
And I'm with Alex saying Winston has too much baggage, no doubt about it. James says give Zach and Zeke their money. That helps the Cowboys.
But then you lose guys like DeMarcus Lawrence. You lose Van Der Esch when he comes up, and I know you got him for a while because you just drafted him, but you lose a lot of the rest of this defense.
No, that money that you give to him is definitely affecting both their linebackers.
Because they're in football, unlike other sports, and I know you probably know this, but I'll just reiterate the point, is there is a hard cap. There is a ceiling of how much money you're allowed to spend as a team, and everyone gets to spend the same, and everyone has to spend close to the same to keep things competitive.
And these players and these agents know the cap goes up every year, so their contract gradually goes up with that cap. So to sit there and say, pay them now, when it comes to Van Der Esch and it comes to, I'm blanking on the other linebacker.
DeMarcus Lawrence?
No, the linebacker.
Well, he's
DeMarcus Lawrence just got paid.
He's an outside linebacker. If you're going Sean Lee.
No, the other young one.
You got me too.
Nope, it came from Notre Dame. Come on, man. Well, anyways, when that guy comes up...
Probably Manti Te'o. I'm just kidding. He was Notre Dame. I know that.
When those two guys come up, I think they're going to be huge money. And to be honest with you, as far as that defense goes, that's what helps that defense.
And to Alex's point, yes, Lawrence is signed
Jalen
already.
Smith.
Oh yeah, Smith. Yes, absolutely. But to Alex's point, Lawrence is signed already. You're 100% right. But remember, these contracts aren't guaranteed. So when you get really in a pinch here and you're looking at the kind of money he's making, all it takes is a bad season or two, and you're going to have to go make a difficult decision. So yeah, he's already signed, but you've got a lot of other guys in this young core that also need to be paid. Even though Lawrence is already paid too, teams that go and max out a lot of their guys aren't usually the teams that win. It's usually teams that try to get the best value out of their guys, like the Patriots have done. That's why they're in these games, and not everybody can get paid. Whether it's Smith, whether it's Van Der Esch coming out, eventually you're going to get to the point where you're just saying, I don't have the cap space.
And they have that young corner.
Tampa Bay was the same way. Yeah,
that young corner as well.
Tampa Bay is the best example of that, except they did it with bad players.
Sharif, thank you. And Jeremy says, don't forget Amari Cooper wants to be paid too.
Absolutely. Amari Cooper does want to be paid, and so does Zeke, and so does and
they got a lot of problems.
Exactly.
I think, to be honest with you, for all Cowboys fans out there, what's going to happen is your offensive line is going to be atrocious. You're going to lose all those players because of retirement or contracts. They're all going to move on. Your defensive line is going to be DeMarcus Lawrence and whatever you draft. You're going to lose one of those linebackers, and you're going to keep Brian, their corner.
Yeah. You're killing me here, kid. You're killing me.
I'm so much older than you. Let's. And then
you're killing me, Granddad.
There you go. Offensively, you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose Zeke. I don't think you're gonna pay him what he wants.
And I'm the guy that's like, don't pay running backs. But I think when you're talking about Zeke and what he's done for this offense, he might be the one exception
you're
to that
gonna
rule.
pay Dak, and you're gonna pay Amari Cooper, and I think you're gonna watch Dak walk.
Zeke walk.
Zeke walk.
Potentially. Also, I do want to challenge James here. He says, no, but Winston needs help at wide receiver. Winston had one of the best wide receiving groups last year. When you talk about Godwin, when you talk about Mike Evans being a stud number one, then Adam Humphries in the slot, and Deshaun Jackson to stretch the field. Not to mention Cameron Brate, great receiving tight end, and O.J. Howard, a budding tight end in the NFL. He's had his passing options. I think his biggest kind of setback has been running back and offensive line to protect him.
Yeah.
So, Winston... I don't know. Maybe you can be Team Winston and say that he throws a lot of yards, he throws a lot of touchdowns. Get him an offensive line, and we can fix things.
We gotta talk to Texans.
I know, but you can't tell me he doesn't have weapons. He's got like 6 guys. How many other quarterbacks can say I got 6 guys?
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. We gotta talk to Texans.
All right, let's talk Texans.
We've almost been live for an hour, and we have not talked to Texans.
Let's talk Texans then. All right, Drew. Fine. So be it. Let's talk about Jadeveon Clowney.
Thank you, daughter.
First. Yeah, let's talk about Jadeveon Clowney first, because those doorstops are perfect play toys. That's awesome.
Yeah, they're great.
Right. So bear with us. We're going to try to survive it. We'll talk about Jadeveon Clowney moving first, okay? Because Jadeveon Clowney, again, has not signed his franchise tag yet.
Right.
Which, if you're the Houston Texans, is super bad news, because you're like, we'll franchise him, we'll figure it out next year.
Yeah.
Because their money's tight, right? Another example of why Dallas needs to be careful with its money. Houston, paying a lot of guys in that front seven, paying a lot of other guys, is getting closer to running out of money, especially when you talk about Deshaun Watson's contract coming up, that they have to be careful with what they do.
It's the reason why they saw Tyrann Mathieu walk away.
Even though they were like, dude, we want to keep him.
We want to keep him.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. He's gone. And you were like, we can't lose both of our young studs on our defense. We got to franchise one of them. And Clowney was the one they chose to franchise. And he's not happy about it.
Well, he wants the long-term deal. And everyone does. I don't blame you if you're in the NFL and literally your career could end with one bad snap. I don't blame them for wanting a long, guaranteed contract, because that, to me, is what kind of reassures guys. Then again, you talk about Jadeveon Clowney and what we were talking about getting out of the South Carolina product coming into the league versus what he actually turned into. You can't tell me that he hasn't been at least somewhat of a disappointment. Was it overhyped? Sure. But when you're talking about the first overall guy, to have the career that Jadeveon Clowney has had with the early injuries and then good play, maybe even great play, but in a good defense that has a lot of other studs out there, not elite level play, I understand them for not wanting to go and just throw 5 years, $85 million at him. I think the Texans, again, just like the Cowboys, are in a tough spot with Jadeveon Clowney. And what do you do with him?
Yeah. Jonathan, about NFC East predictions, man. Unfortunately, we'll get caught up and we'll be talking forever tonight. You can go back in our archives of our videos and you can see everything that we talked about. Literally,
every team gets a prediction.
Yeah, every team gets a prediction.
And we only have Raiders and Jaguars left, so
right.
Yeah, so it's all there. If you want to see any one of those teams, click on our name, click on our video tab, scroll through it. We did Cowboys most recently. Before that was Eagles. I think we still have the Redskins to do, don't we? Or did we just do them? Did we talk Redskins?
We just talked Redskins.
Okay.
Yes,
Redskins are on there. Pretty much any team you want. We've already talked about all 4 of them. Yeah. So feel free for that. Again, we devote pretty much half the back end of the shows to that team. Going back to the Texans, though, this is one of those teams that's confusing, man. It's a real head-scratcher because they won 10 games last year. But they also allowed their quarterback to get hit 65 times. Sacked 65 times, plus hits on top of that. And then we talk about how they need weapons, right? Because DeAndre Hopkins is fantastic. We said he's the best receiver in football.
Yes.
And then we talk about everybody else that can't stay healthy. We talk about other guys like
Fuller
Deshaun,
and Kute and Fuller and Kute.
The dude from Denver. I'm drawing a blank. It's not Deshaun. It is
Thomas.
Demaryius Thomas. Thank you. Demaryius Thomas. I'm stuck. Demaryius Thomas moving on from the Houston Texans. This is one of those wide receiving cores that has tried to find value after DeAndre Hopkins and has struggled to find the guy that can both stay on the field and produce.
And that's why they went out and traded for Duke Johnson.
Right.
But that's a running back. That's a guy that's going to split time. Not that he can't line up in the receiving position. This still does not fix what you're trying to bring up.
Sure, go ahead, steal my thunder. Great. That's why they traded for Duke Johnson, because they need receiving options.
Oh, I stole your thunder.
Yeah, you did. They brought him in because he's a pass catcher. Even though I think they traded for him at a premium, giving up what will likely turn into a third-round pick, but might stay a fourth if he's injured or doesn't get enough snaps or doesn't get enough starts. The Houston Texans now have this roster of guys that if you can find a way to keep 1 or 2 of them healthy with DeAndre Hopkins, we're talking about them having a pretty good receiving set for the Houston Texans.
Oh, sorry, dude. I'm laughing at your face when I stole your thunder. The disappointment you gave me.
It was rough. Meanwhile, going into the show, Drew's like, don't steal my points. Don't steal my thunder.
Don't you steal my points. That's hilarious. I'm sorry, man. I didn't know that's where you were driving into.
Not a big deal.
But you're 100% right. It's not a joke. This team needs weapons beyond DeAndre Hopkins. Not only do they need weapons, they need offensive linemen. It is a scenario offensively where they need to fix something. Sharif had a huge rant just a minute ago, challenged anyone that wants to debate about Deshaun Watson. There's no doubt about it. You need to protect that guy. You need him to be healthy, and you need to make this change offensively because you have a quarterback that could probably take you somewhere. Sometimes, like the Kansas City Chiefs in a sense, when you have a quarterback that you can develop a team around and be good, sometimes you take subtractions defensively to keep weapons around
the quarterback. Once you get the franchise quarterback, everything's out the window, and the Cowboys are like that. It's been the theme of today's show, right? But you go too far, you wind up like the Colts, where you're like, I'm not sure how the rest of this roster stacks up. We have Andrew Luck. The Indianapolis needs to fix the offensive line. I want to talk about that too, but I also want to go to the trade talk that Sharif is going into, saying trade Jadeveon Clowney to the Colts and get an offensive lineman and picks. It's never going to happen. Never going to happen, and let me tell you why. Because they're in the same division, just like the Titans that have three great tackles in Taylor Lewan, Jack Conklin, and Dennis Kelly. They have 3 guys that are starting caliber tackles. Because this move makes Houston better, the GMs are already like, that's not happening to one of my division rivals. It doesn't matter what you offer them. It's not going to happen. So on paper, that makes perfect sense. But in the actual NFL, there's no way Chris Ballard, Mr. Tightwad, I'm not going to spend my money on someone, is going to go give Jadeveon Clowney an $80 or $100 million contract and give one of your offensive line players, which was the strength of your team last year, up to the Houston Texans. It just, I can't see it happening.
Jonathan is on a mission to get us off topic with every
That's
comment.
Okay. We'll talk whatever you want to talk
Who, in your
about.
opinion, has the strongest team going into this year?
Did we say Saints in our preseason rankings? That was a while ago. We did it after. What did we say? Chiefs? Okay, so Chiefs. They're good, man. If anything, they've retooled on defense. They kept the band together on offense, at least towards the back half of the season. I know Kareem Hunt's gone, but we saw Damian Williams come in, and it didn't seem to matter too much.
Right.
They didn't have as many long touchdown runs, but they just threw the ball a little bit more and scored anyway. And then we're talking about Frank Clark coming in, great defensive end, or had a great year at defensive end. I'm still not 100% sold, but good move by the Chiefs, I think.
Right.
They let D Ford walk, who, another guy, one great year, but they weren't sold on him, so they let him go. And then they brought in guys like Tyrann Mathieu that's going to help the secondary out. I think the Chiefs have done a good job. To me, they're the team to beat in the NFL.
Yeah.
We don't have time for power rankings, though, right? I'm
No,
the guy that's
I
like,
mean,
we'll get through half of it. And
I'm
we
really
never get through
surprised
it.
you said the Chiefs. I know you have them in the power ranking, but
I think Chiefs and Saints are pretty close.
the strongest team because the offense is so strong, it's the Chiefs. I just bought the Madden game, and they had them ranked so poorly just because of their defense. I'm just like, they're on something.
And Jonathan, never be sorry about a comment, man. We'll talk about anything.
Yeah.
We like detour into baseball.
Yeah.
We detour into
But
golf.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
me saying that
Drew was
wasn't
just
a
trying to make
negative
you feel
thing.
bad about yourself. So
Yeah.
remember that, and remember that I'm your favorite. All right, let's move on. Now that we got that covered, let's talk about the rest of the text,
That's all right.
shall we?
Jonathan, you could like him. Everyone else will like me.
And Jonathan also says, even with Andy Reid, taking a dagger to your heart, Drew, even with Andy Reid, does that mean the Chiefs don't fall short again? They could, but I think...
And Sheree
tough.
said, and a detour to boobs.
We
All right,
do.
let's-
Exactly. We
let's
talk
get-
boobs. We'll talk
Let's get
anything.
back on it. Who has the
Back
best
to
boobs?
boobs. Yes, exactly. You're stealing my points. You're stealing my jokes. God. You gonna let me have anything this show, Drew?
Yeah, you got Jonathan.
Okay, perfect. That's all I need. All right, we'll move forward and talk about the Texans. Okay, let's get back on track.
Yeah.
Let me go through a couple of their stats last year. Even
Yeah.
though this team had the 8th best rushing offense in the league, that was super deceptive because 550 of those yards came from Deshaun Watson running for his life, and that is unsustainable, number one. Number two, you shouldn't be asking your quarterback, short of a guy like Cam Newton, to run that much in your offense. You want him back there throwing the rock, and it's great when they can move. It's great when they can extend the play. You don't want to ask Deshaun Watson to run 100 times like he did last year.
We're getting thrown off subject.
It's okay.
By the way, Jeremy says...
Oh, Jeremy! That's because he's a Colts fan. It's okay. I forgive you. You're still number one in my playbook. How about that? All right? I don't hold it against you. Et tu, Brute? Doesn't matter.
James says, who's winning the World Series? I'll let you answer that.
Drew wants to think it's the Yankees, which is why I'm stealing his thunder now. I don't think the Yankees are the pitching. I think it's going to be the Astros and their studly pitching staff, even though we saw Garrett Cole kind of take a bit of a step back with a bit of a maybe hamstring injury here. They're going to be fine. I mean, Zach Greinke, Justin Verlander, Garrett Cole. My God. Talk about 3 great aces at starting pitcher.
Yeah.
This is going to be this is the team to beat. It is. I like the Dodgers too, but Houston's the team to beat for me.
No Braves, no Indians.
Oh, the Braves are an afterthought. They'll make the playoffs, but what are you going to do when you get there? It's baseball. You never know. Short series.
Cubs.
Right? All that stuff. Cubs the same way. They don't have the pitching for it. They don't have the bullpen for it. I love my Cubs.
That's your team. I was about to say.
I love my Cubs, but I got we keep it real, right?
Yeah.
I'm not telling you the Titans are winning the Super Bowl. I'm not telling you the Cubs are winning the World Series. They're going to be contenders.
Yeah.
They're going to make the playoffs.
You have said that before.
The Titans are winning the Super Bowl. In my dreams, maybe. Anyway, just real quick. Finishing the baseball thoughts before we talk Houston here. I think the Astros have to be the team to beat when you talk about the starting pitching. They have maybe one of the best sets. I mean, this is like the 99 2000 Braves or whatever when they had Glavine, Schmaltz, and Maddox.
Yeah.
They have 3 studs at starting pitcher. They're killing it right now, man. They almost stole this World Series by trading for Greinke this late.
Yeah.
The only difference is all these guys are old, except for Cole.
I hope it's the Yankees. I don't care.
You don't care, yeah. Because 29 isn't enough. 28,
I know.
whatever.
I need number 28. I just need number 28.
I'm saying anyone but the Yankees, we all win as baseball fans. How about that? All right.
All right. Did you get your stats out that you wanted to say about the Houston Texans? Because
Sure.
I totally distracted you.
No, sure. Let's also talk about them sucking in the pass coverage. I whined about the Chiefs being bad at it.
Yeah.
Houston was bad at it too, and they still made the playoffs. They were 28th there. They lost Tyrann Mathieu. They lost Kareem Jackson. They tried to replace him with Tashawn Gibson from the Jaguars and Bradley Roby from the Denver Broncos. I'm not sure how I feel about this, to be honest. Roby had his chance to be a starter last year. He was always a nickel corner before that. Never panned out.
It's better than what they had. Besides Matthew.
That's I don't know. I like Matthew a lot. I think Deshaun Gibson's fine. I think he's a good player.
Oh,
You're right.
I meant
Matthew's
as a
better.
core. Not the 2 players together are better than 1 player.
I don't know. Roby sucked last year. I just gotta be honest. He sucked. That was his year to step up and be the number 2.
I agree.
And it was all Chris Harris, and everyone picked on Courtney Roby. I'm sorry, not Courtney, Bradley Roby.
No, I agree with you. I'm right there with you. But it's just when you can get a 16-game player, I can't call him a starter, a 16-game player, and you can get a guy in Gibson who won't do the same thing as Tyrann Mathieu does, but can play those 16 games. You get 2 players that play 16 games.
The only thing I'm going to say is you needed somebody to replace them. You got guys who are going to replace them and play.
Yeah.
So, hey, you did it. I'm not going to say you're better off, but we might see 28 turn into 30. Because this has been the way you attack Houston is you just throw the ball. And the problem is a lot of these good teams in the NFL know how to throw the ball. Saints, Rams, Chiefs, Patriots, Titans, But there are good teams that are going to make the playoffs this year. They're going to be able to throw. My question is, how is Houston going to defend that in 2019? They've had a lot to address. They've spent so much focusing on this offensive line, so much other stuff to make it happen. Unless Connie Johnson turns into some stud cornerback out of Kentucky, I don't see that really happening. I don't. There was their second-round pick, their first second-round pick. They went offensive line, cornerback, offensive line. To me, Drew, this is the other weakness of Houston and what's going to hold them back from being a legitimate contender in 2019.
Yeah. Hey, sorry. My dog is... Sorry, guys.
Trying to knock the camera over.
Yeah, just
keep talking. It's fine.
Okay, well, it's...
If it falls over... I mean, how many technical issues have we had, right?
Tons of
This is
them.
the first show in a while that we've actually kept the things right.
All right, let's keep going forward. My intro thoughts to the Houston Texans in their 2019 season is it is a win-now scenario. James, you asked me what I thought. I'm about to tell you. If you're still here, man, I hope you are. They need to win now. Not only do they need to do it for J.J. Watt, I think they need to do it for Deshaun Watson and Hopkins as well. You're talking about people that have taken a beating for your organization, and it literally seems to be one step away, and that's fixing your offensive line. The defense, has tons of issues, but I think you can still do it with the front 7 that you have created.
To James's point, he says the Texans' defense sucks. They were 3rd against the run. That front 7's great. I know Jadeveon Clowney is not going to be there. It's going to take somewhat of a step back, but if you get a healthy J.J. Watt to go with the rest of these linebackers and everything, Houston's going to be fine.
And it's not Merciless, it doesn't stop there. They're 4th in scoring.
Perfect name ever. I just wish his first name wasn't Whitney. Merciless as a linebacker's last name is perfect. But I got to say this. Look, I think they do one thing well, just defend the run, which is great. That's the smash mouth football, but we play differently than we did in the 80s. You're going to have some of these guys step up in the secondary if Houston's going to win something. Right. So I'm with you there.
I got to keep going because I think it's a win-now scenario for this Houston Texans team. I think if you let it go on too long, you're going to lose a lot of your defensive stoutness. You need to call the Washington Redskins and trade a first-round pick for Trent Williams. I know everyone's going to sit there and say the guy can't stay healthy. I don't care if he plays 8 games, 6 games, or 5 games. Whatever he can play for your team can do so much better. This guy will automatically become the second-best player offensively that you have. Not that Deshaun Watson is a terrible player. You've got Hopkins, and then you have Trent Williams. You need to pay, or you need to give up whatever the Redskins are asking for, because you are literally 1 or 2 years away from this team going the complete reverse, and you have to rebuild this team.
If you got a legitimate starter out of Titus Howard or Max Sharping that can play the right side, I'd say sure, go for it. Or maybe Matt Khalil gives you enough on the other tackle spot. But I think the Texans have a 5-man offensive line problem, not a 1-man offensive line problem. And we know left tackle is the most important.
Right.
But it doesn't matter when guys are getting through everywhere. And I think that's where Houston is at. That's why I'm saying pump the brakes. Don't go and give up that first or second round pick that the Redskins are going to demand for Trent Williams for a 31, 32-year-old offensive lineman. It's water under the bridge. This is something you need to address before that. I know they tried. They brought in a bunch of offensive linemen in the draft.
But this guy healthy.
There's been a first and a second round pick on tackles.
This guy healthy is probably top 5 best left tackle in the league.
You just probably should have beat Buffalo out for one of those 38 guys they signed. So when I look at the Texans, I don't think trading for Trent Williams is the right move unless you get the price that fits you. I get it. You want to protect Deshaun Watson, but one guy does not an offensive line make.
It would be
unless you're Quentin Nelson. Apparently,
he can change the attitude of that offensive line.
For the 4 games till he gets hurt.
When they lost Brown, it significantly changed that offensive line.
For the 4, 5, 6 games, and then you can be back to business. My thing is, you need someone who's going to stay healthier.
4 or 5 games put you in the playoffs. 4 or 5 games.
You might be in the playoffs anyway. Honestly, you could just go and beat up on the division and make your way into the playoffs. This division's going to be really close. I think they have 4 good teams here in the AFC South. My Titans are good. I think the Jaguars are good. They won 9 games last year. I think the Jaguars are better than the 4 or 5 games they won last year.
Their defense
Obviously,
is good.
Indianapolis is good. This is the matchup of the playoffs.
Right.
And Houston's good too. They have 4 great teams in this division. I don't think Trent Williams sets you over the edge. I don't. I think he's a great player. And I think, if anything, you want the guy to keep the hits off of Deshaun Watson, but I'm not sure he's that guy.
Well, they already went out and traded for Duke Johnson, so they're obviously trying to put weapons around him. Now you got to protect Deshaun Watson. This is the best opportunity. There is no other left tackle or offensive lineman out there in the open market. I don't care what Dan Snyder says. He is available.
And James is with you. He says, do it now.
You need to do it. And James says, do it now.
But we're back to Dan Schneider again. If he's unreasonable, what are you going to do? You can't overpay for a 31, 32-year-old tackle. And they don't have a GM right now.
You can if you're sitting there saying you have legitimate Super Bowl chance to win
with this
after doing it.
secondary. With this secondary,
I've seen
can't
worse
stop anybody. Yeah, in Kansas
I've
City.
seen worse secondaries
with this
win
secondary,
Super Bowls
when you
than
have
not
to go
Kansas
square
City.
up with Kansas City, you're going to tell me you legitimately have a shot of beating him. When you have to go square up with Tom Brady and the Patriots, you have a legitimate shot. No, this to me is the move to keep hits off Deshaun Watson, which is valuable. Just like I complained about before, there is value there. But is it a first-round pick next year when you're going to be needing to put more players on this team to get Deshaun Watson in a spot to win?
As far as Kansas City goes, I can't sit there and say to beat Kansas City you have to put pressure on
because they're your team.
Patrick Mahomes, because he has proven that pressure only makes that guy so much better. But what you have to do to beat Kansas City or the Patriots is outscore them.
Okay, and you put a left tackle out there. Are you outscoring the Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah, you might. You had the best receiver in the league.
You were the guy telling me Frank Clark's revolutionizing that defense.
No, I did not say that.
You did. You absolutely did.
I
You
said,
told me they're so much better with Frank Clark than they are with Justin Houston and Dee Ford.
Yes.
That's exactly what you told me.
I did say that. But I did say revolutionizing that defense. What I said is not only do they have the pass rush, they add in the run defense that Frank Clark brings because neither Justin Houston or Dee Ford
You're smoking it right now, Drew. You're smoking
don't stop the run well. Neither of them do.
No, they don't. Well, Houston's not the worst. Dee Ford definitely doesn't do
it's too bad
anything.
because he's going back in coverage. So
That's not my choice. I don't get to pick that. Going into this really quick, before we talk about their schedule here, the Houston Texans have glaring holes, but they also have things they do very, very well. They defend the run. We think they're going to continue to do that.
Yeah.
Even though they look like they run the ball well, they don't because their starting running back, which was pretty much the bell cow for last year, Lamar Jackson, didn't get 1,000 yards. We saw Alfred Blue put up some numbers, but he's not that great of a player either. James, I'm kind of with you. You protect Watson with that. I understand the want to protect Watson, and if you can deal Jadeveon Clowney, who won't sign a contract, to go get a left tackle, I say go for it. But I don't think trading for a 31-year-old guy who can't stay on the field for a 27-year-old top or close to top-tier edge rusher is the right answer here. I don't even think Trent Williams is. And I've also heard guys like John McClain talk about how this is never going to how it's not going to happen. How Trent Williams isn't even on their radar because they don't want to bring in a 31, 32-year-old player. If you don't know John McClain, he's a reporter for, I think, the Houston Chronicle out there in Houston. He covers the team all the time. I don't see this happening. Is there a team out there that's going to go give you a tackle this late into the offseason where they have no chance to replace him? Yeah, their team is Tennessee, and they won't do it because they're in your division. So, again, unless there's a team with a glut or a guy that's going to show up that they believe in, that they're willing to deal, kind of like Cleveland and Kevin Zeitler, right. I think the Texans missed the train here. They should have made this move in the offseason and said, we're just going to go get a veteran guy instead of rolling the dice on a couple of rookies, and when we don't like what we see, we're going to go try to trade Jadeveon Clowney for one of them.
They're going to trust in Matt Khalil, and they're going to trust in these young rookies. There's no doubt about it.
Because they don't have a choice.
Let's get into the schedule. We're going to try to get through this, guys. I know we've been a little bit long until we had this, but I'm glad you all stuck with us. Week 1, Week 2, we got on the road in New Orleans playing the Saints, and then they go back to home and face the Jacksonville Jaguars. We see this as kind of a rough start, just like 2018 started.
They started 0-3, and then they beat the Colts. I think this is one of those teams that, again, they're going to start off rough. When you talk about playing on the road against the Saints, that's one of the most complete teams, and you know who can throw? A Drew Brees who's rested and revitalized.
He will rip that secondary apart.
Michael Thomas is going to have another 15, 18 catch game like we see him do every year towards the beginning of the season, and the Texans are going to have no answer for that, I don't think, even though you're going to see Watson do well. You're going to see Hopkins do well. This defense can't keep up with what the Saints have. I think the Saints win this game pretty easy. As for Jacksonville, everyone's healthy, everyone's motivated. The defense is probably playing much better than last year because they're putting up more than 6 or 9 or 10 points every game with a quarterback like Nick Foles. Even though they're not going to be good, they're going to be better. And if you keep this defense motivated, guys like Ngukwe, the Jaguars are in such a better spot because their star pass rusher from the edge, like Ngukwe, is going to be there because they figured out a way to make the money work. Houston has not done that with Jadeveon Clowney, and I know they have J.J. Watt, but you know who also has a bunch of good defensive players? Jacksonville. You know who's going to maul this offensive line? That's probably, when you talk about 2 rookies coming in at tackle, not going to be ready for them? The Houston Texans. They're not going to be ready for what Jacksonville can do up front.
James says, do they beat the Patriots? Because we've done
we get them to week 13.
Because we've done the Patriots. They do get them in week 13. We believe that Deshaun Watson will finally get over that hump and beat the Patriots.
Yep.
But it won't be an easy task. But let's move on to week 3, 4, and 5, where they go on the road to the LA Chargers and then come back home, play the Panthers and the Falcons.
Yeah, the NFC stretch in the South, you're getting both of those home games together. I think both of those teams are teams you're going to be able to kind of exploit a little bit. The Panthers don't throw quite well enough for me to say they're going to beat Houston. The Falcons don't quite defend well enough for me to say they're going to beat Houston. I think this is maybe the game against Atlanta where we see Lamar Miller do enough to get this team a win. Even though, yes, Atlanta is getting a lot of their healthy players back, guys like Deion Jones coming back. I don't want to bet on this Falcons defense being ready to match up with Houston here. Houston made the playoffs last year despite some injuries, despite some setbacks. We saw the Falcons kind of fold under those setbacks. I think that might be the difference in that game.
When you look at week 4 and week 5, one of the weakness of both those teams defensively is putting pressure on quarterbacks. Will they get some pressure on Deshaun Watson? Yeah, this offensive line is weak. But if they can't put a lot of pressure on him and they allow this guy to have time to pick apart your secondary, he has proven it so far he can do it. As far as week 3 goes, when they go on the road against the LA Chargers, what we see here is the same kind of scenario we talk about the Houston Texans, where they allow teams to stick around. I'm talking about the Chargers. Maybe the Chargers are a better team altogether than the Houston Texans are, but they seem to let games like this or teams like this stick around in games and could possibly win. And we have to give it up. Deshaun Watson and Hopkins could arguably be one of the best duos because Hopkins is the best receiver in this league, in our opinion. And we see him all 3 of these games being wins for the Houston Texans.
Exactly. So they started with 2 losses. They come back on a stretch and get 3 wins. After that, we see a 3-game loss stretch for them when they go on the road to the Chiefs, on the road to the Colts, and then even the Raiders at home. We see this as a very rough stretch for a team that is going to be looking for some answers here. I think this is a tough stretch. Chiefs, Colts on the road. You're going to come home to face Oakland, and I know I'm going out of order here again,
no,
Drew,
you're fine.
but I think when you come back to face Oakland, you're going to be fatigued, man. You're going to be playing some of these teams that have just absolutely been dominating you. Antonio Brown, Tyrell Williams from San Diego. If you don't know him, you should look him up. He's a great fantasy wide receiver. He's one of those guys that this is the kind of game he feasts on. I think they're going to have the passing attack to beat Houston in a shootout. I think maybe this is the game that saves not John Gruden's job, but maybe saves his reputation a little bit, and he says, my roster's just not there yet, but we beat teams like Houston that might go on to make the playoffs. I think when you look at things, the Raiders are going to be a challenge for this Raiders team for the simple fact that they're chucking the ball all over the lot.
Yeah, and you look at week 6 and week 7 when they're on the road to Kansas City and Indianapolis. These are another 2 teams that can throw the ball all over the place. We're assuming Andrew Luck is healthy. High ankle sprain, yeah, you give the win to the Texans. But at this point, Andrew Luck is playing, and these are 2 teams that are going to score 30, 40 points. And your team's going to struggle to do that.
Now, James says, do the Texans get through the wild card? Through the wild card? I don't know. To the wild card? I'm going to say they have a good chance to do it. They did it last year, but we also saw Deshaun Watson fold under pressure. I'm not saying he's the guy who folds under pressure, but what I am saying is we saw the Houston Texans not be ready for that moment in the NFL, both as a team and from their quarterback who kind of short-armed a lot of passes. They're probably a fringe playoff team. Not to spoil anything, but they're probably a fringe playoff team. We'll talk about that later. Ask me in 20 weeks, James. That's all I can say.
All right.
Also, Jonathan says, go Eagles. It's in that video tab, man. If you want to see the Eagles, we talked all about them.
Yeah,
We like the Eagles, right?
We do.
I'm not going to spoil the record, but you're going to like what we talked about.
Week 9, Week 10's a bye, Week 11, and Week 12. This is another tough stretch. They go on the road to Jacksonville to play the Jaguars. They get that bye week. They get prepped and ready to face the Ravens in Baltimore. And then they come back home to the Colts. This is a tough stretch, but we believe that at some point in time, this offensive line might have fixed some of their issues. Maybe the rookies got a couple good games underneath them. They're getting a little confidence. Maybe J.J. Watt's on fire, especially matched up with these offenses, maybe minus the Colts, because it's really hard for a division team to beat a division rival twice in a year. These offenses are teams that the Houston Texans offense can beat.
Absolutely, and I think these games, again, they're not going to sweep anybody, but I think Houston's going to be in every AFC South game here. This could be one of those years where the AFC South just beats itself up, where I see a lot of teams go 3-3 or 4-2 and 2-4. We're going to see these guys competitive, I think, this year, and I think that's going to show up with the Jaguars win in Week 9, and also again in the Colts win Week 12, where even if Andrew Luck's back and healthy, this is just going to be a tough team to beat. It is. I mean, maybe T.Y. Hilton has a great game, but by and large, we're going to be seeing the Houston Texans keeping up with them. It's one of those teams that I think both teams are going to be in both of these games.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough for either one of them to beat the other guy twice.
Right. And on the road in Week 11, going up to Baltimore, we all know what the Ravens want to do offensively, and that's run the ball.
Rock.
And what has Houston done well so far? Defend against the run. They were third last year. This is a game where if Houston starts putting up numbers, Baltimore's going to have a hard time trying to keep up with that.
Well, let's move on. Let's talk about the Patriots in Week 13 because we also see that as a win. I think this is the year we've seen Bill O'Brien famously off of the Bill Belichick tree.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the year they finally get it done because they've been close in years past.
Right.
Now you've got Deshaun Watson with a little bit more experience. You've seen a Patriot team that at times in the regular season has been more vulnerable, right?
Right.
We may have a Patriots matchup that finally the Texans get over the hump and they win this game maybe by an edge, but we see them winning it. The Patriots have questions at pass catcher. Patriots have questions, in the defense as to who's going to stop the pass, who's going to stop guys and in the run. I mean, maybe Lamar Miller has the game here.
Even the pass rush.
Right. Exactly. Especially with Trey Flowers gone, I think the Patriots are going to have their work cut out for them to get after Deshaun Watson and stop a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. I don't care how good your corners are. Nobody stops DeAndre Hopkins forever.
Well, you want to put 14 through 17 together?
Let's do it. Let's also spoil it real quick by when James says he honestly sees Houston as a 9-7 win team. We're right there with you, man.
Yeah,
we're right there with you. We see them finishing 9-7. Let's talk about these last 4 weeks. When we talk about the Broncos at home, then the Titans on the road, Buccaneers at home, and the Titans at home as well. This
is a tough three game stretch.
It better be with my team
because you're facing two defenses, and if you throw Week 14, 3 defenses that are real tough.
Yeah,
these are tough defenses. These are legitimate defenses, especially the Titans. I will be the first one to always say this, and as you know,
that's about all we do.
I am not a Titans fan by any means. This team has a legitimate defense to win Super Bowls, and when you sit there and you look at like the Houston Texans, it's a division rival, but these games are not going to be easy wins by any means. And they're going to lose one.
And there's a chance both Titans quarterbacks are out by now. Both Mariota and Tannehill are back to their ways, and they're both hurt by now. If that's the case, I'm going to say take Houston. But there's also a chance Deshaun Watson's hurt because we have not seen a fixed problem here. We'll bet on the split, right?
Yeah.
This late, it's tough to predict. When you talk about games in Week 15 and Week 17, like the Titans and Texans play, this is a tough one to pick from this far out. I'm going to say the Titans get one, and they probably lose one. They probably win at LP and lose they probably win in Houston and then lose in LP because that's just how things seem to shake out in the division. But you never know. You never do. I'm going to bet on both of these teams being good enough to keep each other close in some of these games.
Week 14, when they had the Broncos in Houston, I think it's literally just the fact that the Broncos defense is not giving up. Maybe this is Drew Lock's coming out game where they see a little bit of push from him.
Let's not forget those edge rushers.
Yeah, and I was just about to say, Lavon Miller and Chubb will be eating this offensive line apart. But when we look at Week 16, when they go on the road to Tampa Bay, we believe that
if you're going to make the playoffs,
Jameis Winston
isn't the quarterback.
No, he's
going to be the quarterback because they don't have an option, right? Patrick's gone. Blaine Gabbert's not starting. If he's healthy, Jameis Winston's out there.
Blaine Gabbert has taken a lot of starting position quarterbacks.
He beat Houston last year. You were right.
And he's taken a lot of starting quarterbacks' jobs.
He won't take Winston's starting job if he's healthy.
He took Colin Kaepernick.
Okay, but here's
He
the thing.
took Mariota.
Those teams were looking for something.
"Quote unquote" banged up.
They were looking for something. If Winston's healthy, he's still the quarterback. And even by now, Tampa Bay might be like, time to boot this guy. They're not taking that. He's not taking that job if he's healthy. They'll sit there and just use him up. I look at this game. It doesn't matter because you look at how Tampa Bay might be the worst defense in the game in the league this year. We didn't talk about it, but Vita Vea might miss 4 to 8 weeks with an MCL sprain. They have nobody on this defensive line. They have very, very little linebacker help. I mean, I like Levante David. I think he's a good player. I like Devin White in college, but you never know how well it's going to translate. Look, you look at Houston, or you look at Tampa Bay. Who else they got?
Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody. James, I'm going to get your comment in a second. Jonathan says, did the Eagles make any moves at a second-string quarterback? Go ahead and answer that.
I would definitely consider it. They drafted. Well, they have Nate Sudfeld that just broke his arm or his wrist. It depends how long he's going to be out. I know I'm hearing a lot of reports saying he's not going to miss the whole season. It's probably going to be like an 8-week injury or something like that. If I have Carson Wentz, I'd consider it. But also, if I have Carson Wentz, I'm thinking about building this team in the future. I think they, again, have some interesting choices to make. I know they've had Nick Foles, and they've benefited from that for years. But I think I'm going to just wait out and keep Sudfeld because he's going to be back this year. If Sudfeld was out just indefinitely, let's say he just destroyed his wrist or something, and we're like, he's not going to make it back this year in 2019, I'd say go trade for somebody or go find something.
You just watch the waiver wires. Is what you do.
If it's going to happen, it will be when everybody cuts everybody in the preseason. It'll be after after week 4 that everybody's a free agent.
Right.
It used to be week 3. They changed kind of the way things work now.
James says Brady beats the Texans 42-30. He has no faith that the Texans are going to overcome that obstacle.
Then again, what has been the Patriots' weakness of late? Wide receiving and their ability to throw the ball down the field. How do you beat the Texans? You use your wide receivers and you throw the ball down the field. So if there's a year to do it, you're going to have some success with Lamar Miller in this front 7, even with Dante Hightower coming back, even with Michael Bennett on the edge. You're not as good even as they were last year.
Yeah.
And they struggled last year mightily stopping the run. I think Lamar Miller will keep Brady and the team on the sideline a little bit. I'll roll the dice. I'm rolling the dice. It's the Patriots. They're hard to bet against, but I'm willing to roll the dice and say the Texans find a way to edge them out. Finally, right?
Yep, no doubt. All right, guys. That ends our 2019 review of the schedule. We see them ending the season 9-7, a game back from
like James said.
A game back from last year, just like James said. We're right in the same boat. It's not because we think this team got worse. It's the fact they did not put enough pieces or assets into what was so bad in their offensive line. Their secondary definitely took a step back with Tyrone Matthew gone. Even though I think those pieces are a good addition, it doesn't fix the problem. Go ahead.
No, I do want to hit that, but I also want to talk about Jonathan's question because he's asked a couple times. If you're talking fantasy, Jonathan, I'd say avoid Deshaun Jackson as a wide receiver. If you're talking about real life, I think he's a great addition. To me, he's a 400, 500, 600-yard receiver for the Eagles. He's going to be one of those guys that you're going to see some splash plays out of, kind of like Ted Ginn was for the Saints last year, the past couple of years even, where he's going to have some plays. Everyone's going to be like, man, he's such a great wide receiver. He's such a great addition. But if you're talking fantasy, I don't think the volume is going to be there because teams tend to cover that guy first, and then everybody else is open for the offense. Also, Wentz throws to tight ends. Yes. Wentz loves Ertz. Wentz will probably love Dallas Goedert as well.
Oh, he does.
I think this year. Yeah, I think this year's the year Goddard takes a step forward too. If you're talking fantasy, I'm not going to tell you go draft Deshaun Watson.
No, but if you're a weekly fantasy player, when Deshaun Watson gets in a long drop, at some point in time, he's going to get 5 receptions, 100-plus yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Deshaun Jackson, yeah.
Deshaun
Jackson.
Be the home run play. No doubt about it. He is at some point in time will have a couple big games.
It might be the game he catches 2 long balls, and we talk about a touchdown and 145 yards.
He is worth looking at.
Right.
Due to matchup.
And he's like 4,800 if you're playing DraftKings or FanDuel. But I will say this. From an Eagles perspective, things are better because he's there.
Yeah.
If you're talking real football, things are so much better because you have that deep threat that can stretch out some defenses. And
he's going to see a lot of targets.
To me, the guy to watch for the Eagles is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. We already seen him get used in the preseason. I get it. It was with Nate Sudfeld. They're already getting him involved in the offense. He's a huge target. So is Alshon Jeffrey. Everyone's going to be watching Jeffrey, and you're not going to get those tall and dominant corners on him in year one. I don't like betting on rookie wide receivers, but I'm saying bet on J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. He was my number one wide receiver in this draft, Drew.
Yes, he was.
I think he's a monster. He's a guy that's like 6'3" and 6'4" and really good at going up to get the ball. You know who else is that guy? Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Bet tight ends first. After that, bet J.J. Arcega-Whiteside.
All right, last thoughts on the Houston Texans.
On the Houston Texans, they're going to be good, but they're going to have to do better against some of these teams like Denver from last year, like the Jets from last year that they let hang around. They're fool's gold. They're fool's gold, man. I said it last year, just like I said about the Chargers, and both of those things wound up to be true. They're a team that will look like they're dangerous. They'll win a bunch of games, and then when it comes to playoff time, someone's going to slap them around and put them back in their place. I think Houston's going to need to have some heroes step up to not have that happen to them again this year.
I'm going to go back to what I said at the very beginning when we started talking the Houston Texans. It's a win-now scenario. They need to fix that offensive line. Call the Redskins. Get Trent Williams there. If he only fixes your offensive line for 5 weeks, so be it. It's the best 5 weeks Deshaun Watson has in the NFL since he's been drafted. Guys,
special thanks.
I want to give all the credit to you. It was an incredible show with all the comments. Of course, we love the shares. We love the likes. But it wouldn't be anything without you guys here. I do want to give James and Jonathan big shout out to you two. You guys have been huge. I appreciate you guys sticking through. But I don't want to ignore anyone else because you guys all matter to us. Devin, Sharif, Ian, Frank, Austin, Ty, Scott, Steven, Bees, JP, James, Alex, Jonathan again, Neil, James again, and Jeremy. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Great show, guys, but when I'm out of beer, I got to go tie one on, so, we have to get out of here now. So, it was fun. It was great, even though we talked about a division rival. I don't hate the Texans. I hate the Colts. I don't hate the Texans. They're just there. I still remember Roydell Williams catching that over-the-shoulder pass and beating them and everything with Kerry Collins. Yeah, I know. It's way in the past. I'm sorry. I don't hate the Texans. They're not one of those teams that I think are a bad team, but I think they have a lot of questions to answer if they're going to challenge for anything that actually matters in the NFL, which is a deep playoff run. To me, they're like the worst of playoff teams. That they're going to get there, and then they're going to probably be found lacking again because they don't have the secondary, they don't have the offensive line.
6 years, so.
Yeah, so something's got to give. You need to have an A.J. Boye that steps up, and you're like, man, where did this kid come from in that secondary for them to succeed?
All right, guys.
And Jonathan, man, we appreciate it. You're awesome, too. Thank you so much for the follow, man. We don't hate Dallas. I understand that you're an Eagles fan, and it's easy to hate the Cowboys. So you know what I'm going through when it comes to the Colts, and they just dunk on the Titans every time we play them. What is it, like 11 straight we've lost to the Colts? So I feel your pain. At least you're winning some of those games.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right. It's kind of like the Raiders, just so much better than the Chiefs. But anyway, guys, thank you so much. We will be back on Friday to talk about, I think, the Raiders, actually, surprisingly. And we hope to see you there. It's been a fun show, just like Drew said.
And Steven just jumped in. Raiders on Friday, Steven. Just throwing that out there.
I don't even see that. Thank you, Facebook. But we're glad you're here, Steven. We're going to be talking about the Raiders on Friday. We hope to see you there. It's a fun show, guys. We'll see you then. I'm Jake. This is Drew. Thank you so much. We'll see you.
See ya.